One quick note before we start the show. I recorded this episode from the road, so the audio quality is not nearly what I usually like it to be, so I apologize in advance for that, but I really liked how the episode turned out, so I still wanted to put it out there for you guys, but just know that, I typically have a much higher standard for my audio quality. So, yeah, that's it. Welcome back to Project Command. I'm Captain Peter Eunice, and I'll be your host. On today's episode, we're going to talk about some of the challenges fire officers have when they move into administrative roles and why there's often a skills gap in that part of the fire department. I also want to talk about the concept of institutional knowledge and how we can do a better job of preserving institutional knowledge in the fire service. And lastly, I want to talk about another project I'm working on to introduce modern skills into the fire service. This is a project that I'm personally working on, and just wanted to talk about it and share some of the details with you guys. But before we get into that, a couple of quick items that I want to make everybody aware of. First is, as of this morning, I just re-released the new cover for the book Project Management for the Fire Service. And the reason was I wanted to do something to kind of celebrate the bestseller status and that we're in 3 continents now. So we got a newly edited or newly designed book cover and same content, just new book cover. So, if you already own it, definitely don't need to go buy a new copy or anything like that. But if you don't have a copy, this is a great time to get the new bestseller edition cover. And if you want a signed copy, just feel free to send me an email at projectcommandpodcast@gmail.com or message me on LinkedIn, and I will happily get one in the mail for you. Also, I'm going to be speaking at FRI, which is it's in a couple weeks actually. So that's, August 12th through 15th? Don't quote me on that, but I think that's right. So in any case, I'll be speaking at FRI, and I will be on the discovery stage at 2 p.m. on Thursday, talking about, surprise, surprise, project management in the fire service. And if you are around and you want to come check it out, I would love to see you there, and just love to chat with anybody that's there. And if you're going to be in town for that, feel free to message me if you want to grab some drinks or get together. Always looking to meet up with some different people there. So, yep, okay. All right, I think that's about it. So, yeah, let's get into the episode. All right, guys. So, I want to talk today about something that I've been talking about a lot recently with some of my coworkers and some different people that I've been talking to through the podcast. And that is the concept of, I guess we could call it the administrative skills gap. And I think that this is something that people in the fire service kind of generally understand. But, so kind of in a nutshell, imagine you're hired as a firefighter. You're 18 or 20 or 24 or maybe even 26, 28, 30, whatever. And some people come in with a college degree, some people don't. Some people come in with a trades background, some people come in with a military background, just a very wide variety of skills. And they spend the first part of their career on a fire truck, fire engine, heavy rescue, whatever. And the overwhelming majority of their training is in things like pulling lines and forcing doors and cutting a roof and EMS and extrication and hazmat, all these different things. And we're given pretty much no training on how to manage a program or a project or how to use various different parts of Microsoft Outlook like Excel or PowerPoint or whatever. And so we spend the first 10 years of our career, or 15 or whatever, learning those skills but not those other skills, while our counterparts in other parts of local government are learning nothing but those skills. Okay? So then you get promoted, you get moved into an administrative role, whether that's planning or logistics or facilities, fleet, what else would there be? 911 liaison, fire marshal, what have you. And now there is an expectation that you're going to know how to use all that stuff. And your counterparts in local government who have been in various different roles like risk management or human resources or budgeting and finance or whatever, have spent the last 10 years learning nothing but those skills. And so now you're a fire officer who is highly competent at tactical operations, highly competent on the fire ground, and you are now being introduced to brand new technology, brand new systems, brand new workflows, etc., etc. And this is a really uncomfortable place for fire officers to be, firefighters generally, because we pride ourselves on being highly competent. That's kind of the name of the game. You show up to a fire call and you do your job very well. You pull the line quickly. You force the door efficiently. And so it's uncomfortable for us to be in this position where we feel like a fish out of water. And that's a big problem as well because if you think about those administrative roles that fire officers find themselves in, those turn over very quickly. So, well, maybe not very quickly, but 2, 3, maybe 4 years. So, we basically are saying, hey, I need you to learn everything that your counterparts in other parts of local government have learned over the first part of their career. I need you to learn that in about a year or 6 months or whatever, get good at it, and then just as you get good at it, we're probably going to be sending you back out to operations right at about that time. So you can see the challenge there on multiple levels. The challenge to the employee, which is that they feel like a fish out of water, which causes them to be frustrated and disenfranchised and demoralized. The challenge for the organization, which is that these are important roles. I mean, they're not exciting. They're not as exciting as going to a fire or whatever, but these are really critical positions. Think about it. So you've got fleet, which keeps the fire engines going up and down the road. You've got facilities. This is where we live. Strategic planning. This is who's getting money for the budget. This is who's planning, forecasting risks in the community and keeping our ISO and accreditation and all that. These are challenging positions and important positions. And we're putting our people in a position where it's going to be very difficult for them to succeed. And they're having to spend a ton of time learning skills by watching YouTube videos. Like, hey, how do I build a Excel table to show our apparatus and what year they were made and when their last maintenance was? And I don't know how to do that, so now I'll watch a YouTube video. And then there's a study, and I can't remember where or when, but I promise it's real, which shows that on-the-job learning is the slowest way to actually learn something. And that's maybe not true in the actual fire service where like you need on-the-job training. Like going to fires is the way to do it. You can't just sit in a classroom or read a book and know how to fight fire. So you must do on-the-job training. But when it comes to learning a skill in an admin role, it's probably the slowest way to learn something. Like self-teaching and trying to figure it out as you go will take you months versus somebody actually showing you how to do it and then you getting to practice and all that. So okay, now we kind of understand the problem. And then we look at sort of the way that local government is structured. And I think what has happened over time is we've built a lot of redundancies. So if you've ever had to purchase anything for your fire department, you know that about 1 million people need to sign off on it before you can buy it. Like you want to buy a box of pens, it needs to get signed off by like 100 people before you can actually put in a PO for those pens. And I think the reason is we know that we're not like really preparing our people for success in large measure. And so we just create all these layers of safety to prevent things from happening, prevent people from accidentally buying things wrong or accidentally violating some purchasing law that's, for our local government. And while that's well intentioned, it creates layers and layers and layers of bureaucracy. And in addition to that, innovation in the fire service tends to happen at the operational level because that's where the accolades come from. You develop a new method for, ventilation or whatever. That's exciting and people want to talk about that. But new ways for the fire department to organize projects or programs, not nearly that exciting. You're not going to get the same kind of accolades. So we really champion innovation at the operational level, which for good reason, right? I mean, that's where the lives are on the line. But that means that we end up with systems in admin that are like for the 1990s. You end up with, very old technology, antiquated processes that you haven't really looked at or updated in a very long time. And so you have this sort of perfect storm. Oh, and one more thing, the mentality of a firefighter or a fire officer is you show up on scene, you get about 10 or 20% of the available information, and then you have to use that limited information to make high quality decisions very, very quickly. And we're taught that, we're trained on that, and through repeated exposure to that method of decision making, it gets burned into our brain. And so firefighters by default are very reflexive. very reactive. And we have to be. That's how it is on the fire ground. But when you're put in charge of a 2 or 3 year initiative, like a new station construction, or specing a new apparatus, or implementing a new community paramedicine program, or writing an RFP for 12 lead monitors and then training people and then deploying them or whatever, you don't want that get 10% of the info, very reactive mindset. But unfortunately, that's kind of our modus operandi. So what we have here is kind of a perfect storm. We have antiquated systems from the 90s and early 2000s that we're using to run most fire departments, and there's not a lot of incentive for innovation there. We have firefighters that made their bones and got the overwhelming majority of their training fighting fire, who are now in administrative roles being asked to perform skills using technology that they're not familiar with and haven't really had any exposure to. And there's not typically a good turnover process for these. And then the turnover happens very quickly. So just as someone gets good at it, they're moved out back to operations and somebody new is put in. And then in addition to that, the mindset of a firefighter is, almost exactly the opposite of what you need in these kinds of roles. And so this perfect storm, oh, and then of course the bureaucracy, I almost forgot to mention. The bureaucracy, layers and layers of bureaucracy to protect us from the fact that we are in this perfect storm, but that also makes things very complex and frustrating. So this sequence of, or this, amalgamation of issues comes together to make the administration of a fire department very, very difficult. And that frustration is felt by everybody, and I mean everybody, like the people involved with it, the chief who wants to get things done, the firefighters on the line who are waiting for that new equipment or are frustrated that the new policy hasn't come out for uniforms so they can know what jackets they can buy or whatever. Everybody is frustrated by this. And it's really hard to make changes in local government, or any government really. So that's kind of the challenge, and it's an uphill battle. It's a really uphill battle. And so I have these two initiatives that I'm working on for my department, and these are kind of ideas that we've been kind of brainstorming, like what can we do to help bring modern ideas and training and education into the fire service while also capturing that critical institutional knowledge. Now, when I say institutional knowledge, what I mean is, imagine you're the facilities captain and you finally learned how to write an RFP, you finally understand the process to do architecture and engineering for a new station build and who the different stakeholders are, and you know how to, the people you need to contact in general services to get things fixed at the firehouse, and on and on and on. That's institutional knowledge, and it's very, very valuable. It's extremely valuable because it takes them years to acquire, and when they go back to operations, a lot of times they take that knowledge with them, and somebody new comes in and has to learn it. So the name of the game is, how do we trap that institutional knowledge? Maybe not trap, that's not the right word. How do we retain that knowledge in administration so that we don't keep having to reinvent the wheel? And then the skills that are important for the fire service are different than they were in 1990 and 2000 and 2010. And I'm specifically talking about the administration or the running of a fire department. The need for things like data analytics and program management and AI, and being able to meet the need for increased transparency, which is coming from the community vis-a-vis FOIA requests, and an increased demand for public scrutiny, which is a good thing in my opinion, but it's more of a challenge to meet those. And so those are the kinds of skills that we need in the modern fire service. Okay, so enough of me rambling. Let's get to the two ideas. So the first is what I'm calling the institutional knowledge series. And so what this is, we're going to put together a either weekly or every other week class, 1 to 2 hours, run by somebody who's acquired valuable institutional knowledge. That could be things like how to manage the procurement process, how to understand the budget cycle, a good understanding of Microsoft Teams, or how to manage long-term care facilities, and how to deal with frequent flyers at long-term care facilities. What have you. All these things that people come into these roles and have to acquire this knowledge. So what we're going to do is we're going to host these every week, every other week, and then we're going to record all of them. And we're going to create a searchable library of various different lectures on institutional knowledge. All these different things. And maybe we'll chop them up a little bit and create like smaller ones, like 30-minute ones or 15-minute ones that just explain individual concepts. And we're going to create a searchable library of all this institutional knowledge. And of course, over time, some of it may become outdated. And if that's the case, okay, well, that's just something we'll have to update. But the end goal is that after 6 or 9 or 12 months or whatever, we're going to have a comprehensive library with an expert, not just in the generic idea of a budget cycle, but how to manage a budget cycle in our specific department, managing our specific issues and constraints and bottlenecks and what have you. And we'll have a comprehensive library of all these things. So when somebody comes in and they're the new facilities captain, we can say, hey, by the way, these are a couple of your predecessors or of your coworkers explaining concepts that are really important for you to understand. So they can go and watch the videos, and over their first couple of weeks of onboarding, they can watch these and ask questions and jot down notes and go back and, excuse me, continually reference that resource. So that's going to, and then in addition to that, it just, I think firefighters intuitively understand this, but you don't really learn something or you don't really know something until you have to teach it. So you understand the budget process or the procurement process or whatever at a sort of general level, but when you really have to go explain it to somebody else, that's when you kind of get into the nuts and bolts of it and kind of firm up those thoughts in your brain. So I think it's a good way to kind of get everybody thinking about these kinds of things and then also save it as a legacy resource. And then the other thing that we're going to do in conjunction with this is a modern education initiative for the fire service. So we're going to partner with either Coursera or some similar platform. And Coursera is just basically like you can either have a free account or a paid account, and there's a host of different courses and professional certificates, professional specializations, even just like 2-hour guided everything from a 2-hour guided project to you can get your master's degree on there, whatever, and everything in between. And if you have the premium membership, you can do a ton of stuff for free. Like you could go do a 6-month professional certificate in data analytics from, totally legitimate places like Vanderbilt University or University of Pennsylvania. Or, even Harvard and Stanford have some different programs on there. And so what this is going to do is we can come up with a list of modern knowledge bases within the fire service, like program management, data analytics, Lean Six Sigma, advanced drone operation, project management, cybersecurity, all these different things where it's like, man, I really wish we had more of that knowledge in our department. And then we can issue a certain number of 6 or 12-month licenses, professional, or not professional, premium licenses, so that these are all free. So imagine, you come up to administration and you're the new planning captain. And we say, okay, here is your 12-month Coursera premium membership. This means that you can take any number of classes for free. You can pick any data analytics professional certificate you want. There's like 50 different options from 50 different, universities, or one from Google, or one from, Amazon Web Services or whatever. Pick any of them, and you have to get a professional certificate in data analytics in the next, whatever, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, however long it takes. And we're going to give you an hour of your day to get this done. So that, we're not asking you to do it at home. We're giving you the time at work. We're going to pay for it, and we're going to provide you with access to the system. It's very easy to use. So now what happens is, okay, imagine we do this for 6 or 12 or 18 or 24 months. Now we have a host of people who, within their first 6 or 12 months in a 2 or 3 or 4-year position, have acquired a really useful professional certificate in a very much needed knowledge base within the fire service. Now they're pretty savvy with data analytics or program management or Lean Six Sigma or whatever. Now they're able to teach an institutional knowledge series course on it and spread that knowledge to everybody. They're a much more valuable resource because they have professional training in something. And also we've invested in our employee and said, hey, we're going to help you increase we're going to help you, strengthen your resume by giving you a professional certificate from a, super legit university. So very minimal costs associated with this. I've been looking at Coursera. I'm still waiting to hear back on some of their bulk rates, but it's about $400 a year to do one of these. And so, imagine you do 10 of them at a time or whatever. We're talking about $4,000 a year, which in terms of a fire department budget is basically a drop in the bucket. So anyways, you can do 10, 15, 25 even, whatever. So These two initiatives, in conjunction with each other, the Institutional Knowledge Series, as well as this Modern Education Initiative, the goal is inject relevant, modern, desperately needed skill sets into our workforce, and at the same time, create a searchable library by having our people teach recorded courses on the things that they're doing, the things that they've learned, the knowledge that they've acquired. So we inject the knowledge in, and then we also, kind of put a moat around that knowledge so that it doesn't leak out or seep out when people leave. So inject it and then keep it. And the goal is let's introduce modern skills. Well, that's kind of repetitive. Obviously, I just said that. The goal is to basically modernize the skill set of the fire department with those two concepts. And so, in any case, that's kind of the idea. And I've got so one of the projects, the institutional knowledge series. I've got we're pretty far along with it. We're getting ready to deploy it pretty soon. I still have to kind of make the final presentation on it. And as far as the modern education initiative side, I'm still working through some of the numbers and putting together kind of what the plan will look like and the timeline and the deliverables and all that kind of stuff. So still working out what the exact plan is going to look like, but that's the bones of it. So I'll definitely keep you guys updated as we move forward with that. But I'm pretty optimistic about this, and I'm thinking about writing an article to kind of get this idea out, like these two projects done in tandem. So more to come on that. Oh, actually, one more thing I want to say about that. Um, I think that to me, part of the value of this is how approachable it is. So, what we're really saying is for an investment of your time of, 2, 3, 4 hours to watch some of these videos, as well as an hour a day for 2, 3, 4 months, we can give you the knowledge you need to be successful. And I think that that's pretty approachable both from an individual and an organizational level because what we're not saying is, hey, you got to go back to college for 4 years or anything crazy like that. It's a pretty modest investment of your time, zero investment of your own money, but a modest investment of your time, and we're going to give you the skills you need to be successful. And I think that makes people feel much more invested in the role when they feel as though they've been invested in and given the tools that they need to succeed. So I think you'd get a lot higher performance out of fire officers when they feel trained and prepared for the role. And just think what the fire department could look like if we have a ton of people that are, imagine this, people that are as trained for their admin roles as they are for operational roles. I mean, think about how we could be firing, how many more cylinders we could be firing on organizationally, how well programs could be managed and projects could be managed, how when someone has, something that needs to be implemented, it gets done on time and on budget. I mean, what kind of a huge difference would that make for, the firefighters on the line as well as the community we serve and on and on. All right, so yeah, enough about that. One other thing I wanted to cover today, and it's actually something I just recently wrote an article. I don't want to say any more about it because it's going to be published soon. I don't want to get ahead of it. But the essence of the article is that there's a lot of stress associated with managing fire department projects. So, and I think, firefighters will hear that and they'll say, well, look, we go to fires, we see people get hit by cars and overdose on drugs and get shot or whatever, and we have to deal with that and all these other things. So, how could the stress of a project even come close to matching that? And the short answer is it doesn't. So, I'm not saying that managing a project is the same as, seeing somebody die or whatever. Not at all. Not even close. But there is a stress associated with it. And it's sort of a more chronic stress. You carry it around with you day after day. And I think it's especially poignant because, if you're working at like Capital One or something, not to pick on Capital One, I'm sure it's just a great company, but if you're working at Capital One and you get given a project, yeah, of course you care about the outcome, but, it's sort of maybe it's in abstract terms versus if you're a fire officer and you're charged with implementing a new piece of safety equipment, the people that are going to benefit or be hurt by a poor project or a good project, inversely, are people that you'll sit down at the dinner table with at the firehouse, or your friends, or your daughter's godfather, or whatever. And so there's an added pressure to get things right, and then that stress, kind of like we were talking about earlier in the episode, it's especially stressful because you're being asked to do something with high stakes, like, hey, get this important thing done. The people that need it are your brothers and sisters, but we haven't really given you the training or the tools to do it. And then we also have these kind of crazy expectations of the fire service. Like when I went to PMP school, the cool thing was I met a lot of project managers in different fields, and I talked to them about the projects that they're running, and then in turn the projects that we run in the fire department, and they're shocked. They're shocked that we will take a hyper complex project and will basically hand it to a fire captain and say, "Hey, good luck." They're like, "Yeah, if you were in my line of work, we would assign an entire project team working on nothing but that." Whereas in the fire department, we're likely to just give it to a fire captain or battalion chief and say, "Hey, good luck. You can spend a little bit of money on overtime, but this is, add this to your plate of 15 other things you got to do." So we're giving people important projects that have to get done, where the impacts of those projects will be felt by their brothers and sisters, and they don't have the training or the background in these things to get them done. And we're putting kind of a crazy expectation of like, hey, do this with like a quarter of the resources that the private sector would give you to handle a similar level of complexity project. So that comes with a lot of stress. And then the last thing I'll say about that is we don't even really acknowledge that stress. We just go, oh, well, it's not as hard as going to a gunshot wound, so you'll be fine. And you've dealt with fires and all kinds of other stuff, so you'll be totally fine. And that stress kind of comes home with you, and it's nagging. And I don't think we really do a good job of acknowledging that or supporting it. And the result is that people often get burned out of dealing with this kind of stuff, and they maybe handle one or two projects and then they don't want to do it anymore, which is a real shame and a loss of a valuable resource, because once you've managed a handful, you get better and better, and you're able to deliver better results for our workforce and our community. But, there's all the stress associated with it, so you get burned out and you don't want to do it anymore. So I think, with that being said, it's really important that leaders in organizations recognize that there's stress associated with this kind of stuff, acknowledge it, say it out loud, provide resources, set time aside to meet with the people that are handling these kinds of projects, and just check in and see if they need support, or just let them know, hey, I know that this is a lot. You're carrying a lot of weight right now. So, yeah, I guess that's it. That's all I really wanted to cover today. Um, yeah, so I guess I'll just close with, please go out and grab a copy of the book. I would be very grateful if you enjoy it. I'd be very grateful if you would leave a review on Amazon. Those really help with the visibility. Project Management in the Fire Service, available right now on Amazon. So go out and grab yourself a copy. Thanks again for listening to Project Command, where we bring command level thinking to every project in the fire service.